Yume and Mizuto become step-siblings after Yume's mother Uni marries Mizuto's father Maniaki. Unfortunately, their parents are unaware they dated 6 months ago, making the whole situation extremely unpleasant because they do not want to hurt their parents. They chose to keep it hidden. Yume then offer a game-like system to prevent them from acting like ex-lovers whenever one of them acts like an ex. They must grovel and admit that they are the younger brother or sister. Yume then uses this opportunity to begin looking through Mizuto's belongings, thinking it's perfectly normal sibling behavior. And as she gets closer to his secret stash of naughty magazines, Mizuto realizes he's been duped from the start, and seeing no way out, he promptly apologizes for the way he treated her in the past. Yume become agitated upon hearing this. Mizuto instantly corrects her, saying, "That's not typical sibling conduct." Then he compels her to call him Oni-chan, which she does. Mizuto then informs her that he's just beaten her at her own game, and that she may think she's smart, but she's not. Nowhere near his level of rage. By this, Yume rushes out the next day, while Mizuto is astonished to see him at their high school entry ceremony. Yume has been elected as the class representative, and she has revealed that she aced her entrance exam. As a result, she became extremely popular. She then uses her popularity to tell everyone that they're siblings, and she's the older one, only to bother Mizuto. But to her surprise, he remained undisturbed. Later, 2 males approach. Mizuto wants to befriend one of them. He acts coldly towards them and excuses himself to the bathroom, where he overhears one of the same 2 lads talking about his sister and how cute she is, and how he plans on befriending Mizuto in order to get to her. Back home, Yume shows her fury. She asks a question to the 2 males who have been attempting to coax Mizuto into approaching her, claiming that they are a bunch of gutless worms who lack the bravery to approach her directly. Why is he being so disinterested? Whereas Mizuto merely brushed her off as they walked into school tomorrow. Mizuto is approached yet again by the 2 lads Yume, but suddenly changes his mind and begins acting as if she is his girlfriend. To their amazement, they swiftly inquire if they are siblings, to which Yume responds that she is sorry for having a brother, complicated, stunning everyone involved. Later that day, Yume's mom sends her a message warning her that they will be late. Yume then informs Mizuto of the news, to which he offers to prepare her something to eat. Yume is ashamed about her chest touching Mizuto's arm earlier that day while cooking, so she encourages him to forget about it. Mizuto tries for a while to recall what happened before telling her that he has already forgotten about it, pissing her off and making her anxious about her physique as a form of retaliation. He decides to sit next to him while only wearing a bath towel, luring him into looking at her. This almost works, but she goes too far and her towel almost falls off, forcing Mizuto to assist her in remaining covered up. Defeated, she tries to escape but trips, and they both collapse on the sofa in the heat of the moment. With Yume nearly naked, they have forgotten about the game and are about to kiss when they are rudely halted by their parents. Mizuto gets home. He advises her to hurriedly hide beneath the sofa to avoid their parents. Seeing them, they both realize that circumstances like these are the reason they no longer like each other. The next day, Mizuto is contacted by a random man called Kawanami, who expresses an interest in getting to know him. Mizuto swiftly brushes him off, saying that he seemed like a player type and that he'll never let him near Yume. He retaliates by adding that, unlike the previous boys, he would like to get to know him. But this piqued Mizuto's interest even more. Kawanami then teases them both for being far too close. Later in pay class, you might run into Minami, a random girl who was admiring her chest, noting on how large it is for her figure and complaining that she hasn't grown an inch in a year. You can console her by telling her that she was the same size last year and that she will undoubtedly continue to develop while exercising. You might be startled to see Minami so athletic, stating that she sucks at athletics since she doesn't want to tarnish her status as class rep. She pushes herself to the limit, doing well in class and nearly passing out, but thankfully Mizuto saved her in time. He then informs her that she performed well and that she didn't have to work so hard. He then passes her over to Minami and instructs her to transport her to the infirmary. The 2 females then became acquainted at the nurse's office. Minami is astonished to learn that Yume is currently ill the next day. She then bothers Mizuto until Kawanami arrives and saves him. Minami then insists on paying a visit to her close friend, seeing it as an opportunity to observe Yume and Mizuto. Kawanami tries to butt in, but is immediately shot down at home. Mizuto enters Yume's room with Minami, and while in her sickness, haze, Yume begins blurting out strange, embarrassing things such as "never leave me again, Mizuto," and "I felt extremely lonely without you." Reading the situation, Minami lets Mizuto to the kitchen in the hopes of preparing some food. After feeding her, she leaves, but not before asking Mizuto if they are truly siblings. He responds that they are stepbrothers. Later, Mizuto is still caring for Yume, who is bombarding him with increasingly bizarre requests like giving her money and stroking her hands as she sleeps. When the time comes to recheck her temperature, she tries to decline, but Mizuto insists. Much to his surprise, it returns to normal, exposing that she was only playing with him the whole time. Of course, Mizuto is irritated when she claims she was wasting his entire evening, but he lets it go because she is still technically healing. But not before he persistently teases. Yume zealously saved every item Mizuto gave her in a tiny box 6 months ago, while they were still dating. But today she may find herself with a pair of Mizuto's underpants. She then sniffs them just before deciding that having them counts. She gets determined to return them after losing their game, but she discovers that he is awake, forcing her to wait until he goes to sleep. Then at 4 a.m., she attempts to sneak into his room, only to find Mizuto doing the same thing while holding her bra. Despite their current predicament, they both agree to meet to discuss matters. Yume is defeated in a game of rock, paper, scissors, and must go first. She then admits that she made a mistake and resorted to her old habits of keeping everything relating to him private. This, in turn, caused Mizuto to blush with joy. She goes on to say that when having a shower, she happened to find his underwear just as her mother walked in. Mizuto then practically stated the same thing, angry by Yume accusing him of doing something strange with her bras, to which Mizuto paused for a second only before denying it, making Yume suspicious of him in return. Mizuto accuses her of doing something strange with his underwear, which we may hesitate for a second before denying despite their skepticism. They both admit to breaking the rules and agree on a single demand that may be used on everything. The next day, Yume sees Mizuto with a girl, mistaking her for his date. Back at home, she becomes envious. Yume comes across a pair of women's shoes. Mizuto brings the girl home, so she uses her one demand to force him to go food shopping, leaving the girl alone in his room. But she vanishes as Mizuto demands. You are welcome to inspect her room, but she insists that nothing has been changed or removed. Mizuto is concerned since the female was actually Minami in disguise, and she had asked him to marry him because she is obsessed with Yume, and marrying Mizuto would make Yume her sister. Minami's childhood friend, Kawanami, says Minami can become passionately obsessive as a favor. He instructs Mizuto on how to stop her. Mizuto later approaches Yume and asks her on a date, stating his desire to do so. On the date, you may be concerned about Mizuto's motivation and, for some reason, find herself incredibly attracted to him through a flashback. The date was clearly Kawanami's idea. The date becomes tenser as Mizuto's remorse mixes with Yume's. Yume becomes disoriented while Mizuto is in the bathroom. Mizuto calls her, but Yume is unhappy since he is courteous to her and does not insult her with sarcasm. She recalls being lost on their first date until he found her in a similar predicament. Mizuto later finds her and mocks her, so they plunge into their customary squabbling and genuinely enjoy themselves. After seeing the date, Mizuto is shocked that they get along better as step-siblings than they did as lovers. Minami apologizes to Mizuto and promises to be more restrained in the future. She does, however, disclose that she is not ready to give up her Yume fixation and is still conflicted about him. When asking for a date, you may have Mizuto sit for a photo session as punishment because she now thinks him very handsome and shoots hundreds of images immediately before asking him to hug her from behind and whisper in her ear. The next day, Yume begs Mizuto to assist her in purchasing a gift for Uni for Mother's Day. He first refuses, but she pressures him by employing some risky work techniques. After walking around the mall, they settle on purchasing roses, which they deliver to Uni. Mizuto is reminded of his deceased mother and later prays at her shrine, which causes her to cry joyful tears. You may notice him praying and come to his aid in her own way. He then tells her that she died when he was very young, and that he can't even remember her face on his own. Later, Mizuto suggests that their parents spend the night alone because they are technically newlyweds. Percy offers going to a cheap love motel because all other possibilities are out due to their age, but his suggestion is refused, so Mizuto decides to spend the night at Kawanami's, while Yume sleeps next door at Minami's. Kawanami explains to Mizuto that he and Minami used to be best friends, but that despite living next door, they have drifted away. Kawanami then plays a prank on Mizuto by yelling some not-so-safe work stuff about Yume's chest through the thin walls, making her incredibly embarrassed. Mizuto retaliates by tying up Kawanami and reading his childhood diary, in which he mentions wanting to grow up and be a cop in order for him to marry and safeguard Minami. After dinner at a restaurant, Kawanami points out to Mizuto that, while he and Minami argue openly about everything, Mizuto and Yume argue by trying to mislead, undermine, and outdo each other, which subsequently appears to be unhealthy. Mizuto and Yume meet on separate balconies that night. Mizuto observes that unless their parents split unexpectedly, they will be stuck as step-siblings for the rest of their lives, which makes them both sad and pleased. At the same time, a week has passed and exams are fast coming. Yume, as a top-ranked student, is desperate to keep her place and defeat Mizuto, so she studies day and night after the first exam. She is enraged when she realizes Mizuto purposefully lowered his own score to allow her to win. Mizuto argues that he has no need for the highest position and that she has built her life around it, so she should have it. But because she is so preoccupied with it, he will teach her a lesson. Yume then begins to question whether their antagonism was really genuine, reflecting on how he might have done the same thing before they even met. After the tests, Yume realizes that Mizuto has finally surpassed her as the top-ranked student, albeit he challenges her to beat him in the finals. If winning is so important to Yume, she realizes she is second. She does not feel the pressure to be perfect, and she actually relaxes after seeing that everyone around her treats her the same, as Mizuto has been trying to teach her. Realizing how much he cared for her, she goes to locate him in the hopes of declaring her love again, stating that she can't live without him, but is surprised to discover him talking to another lady, Isuna Higashira, a severe introvert, whom Mizuto deems Higashira despite having met only lately. Yume, his best friend, attempts to hide her envy, but Mizuto picks up on it, especially after she's been behaving extra sweet to her in his favor, which creeps him out and makes him want her to break the beans on why she's been acting fishy. He first confuses her, causing her to lose the game, and is then given one demand, which he uses to ask her, "What's the matter?" Yume acknowledges that she is envious, so he reassures her that nothing is wrong between them and then reminds her that they are siblings. Now, the day after meeting Higashira, Mizuto exclaims that Yume is jealous of her, causing Higashira to explain that they are simply friends in her strange way by expressing she wants. She was a young man. The next day, Yume is confident that they are just pals. At school, Minami sends a letter to Higashira, declaring that she knows her secret and inviting her to meet her at a specific location after school. When she arrives, she is confronted by Minami and Yume, who grill her about like. Mizuto Minami then employs some extremely specific skills, demonstrating that, sure, Higashira does have feelings for him, but she is simply too inexperienced to recognize them. Minami vows that she and Yume will assist her in getting a date with Mizuto, but she first declines, preferring to remain friends. Yume notices Higashira's self-conscious, exactly like she was in middle school, and gives her a pep talk about how he could be hers. When she's unwell, he could hold her hand, walk her to school, and give her all the time in the world. This seemed to give her enough bravery to pursue him, though you can't help but be concerned about the scenario. Yume and Minami are forced to concede after witnessing Mizuto and Higashira at school. Mizuto is not romantically attracted and is reluctant to begin some interests. Minami insists on Higashira enticing him with her breasts. However, Mizuto shows little interest. Yume recognizes that changing Higashira's personality to attract Mizuto is a bad idea. Minami then decides to give her a makeover instead, but Mizuto barely reacts, except to tease her about not eating too much fatty food because she will gain weight. Frustrated, and as a last resort, Minami tells Higashira to confess as soon as possible later in school, which Higashira manages to do later in school to make a sincere confession. But Mizuto gently told her that, while he is certain they would make a fantastic couple, his heart already belongs to someone else, despite the fact that he knows she doesn't deserve it. Yume is irritated. Mizuto's emotions are still quite powerful. He remains concealed, but she can't help but cry with excitement. Higashira returns to being Mizuto's friend, and she discovers that she appreciates it more now that there is no sexual tension. That's it for this part, so let's wait for the next one to see how things go. In the meantime, subscribe to the channel and don't miss out on the other entertaining anime videos. Peace out.